All right, and we're less than 40 days out from the NFL draft, and it will certainly be interesting to see how things end up. Our guy Ryan Wilson, he's really busy this time of the year making his latest mock drafts, and here is the very latest one. In this version, he has 4 quarterbacks taken in the first 6 picks, including the Raiders trading up a spot to land Will Levis. He's got Bryce Young going first overall to the Panthers, then C.J. Stroud, Will Anderson Jr., Anthony Richardson, and Jalen Carter rounding out the top 5. And we have the guy himself, Ryan Wilson, joining us here on CBS Sports HQ to talk about his latest mock draft. And Ryan, we're going to start off talking about Will Levis potentially going to the Raiders. We know the Raiders recently signing Jimmy Garoppolo to that 3-year deal. Why do you think Vegas would trade up to get a guy like Will Levis?
Jacqueline, I'm laughing a little bit because this feels like Bill Murray in Groundhog Day. I wake up and I hear you ask me these questions. I feel like I'm answering the same questions. I thought Coach did a great job on the voiceover explaining all the concerns that come with drafting a quarterback. But when we talk about the Raiders and Will Levis trading up in this latest mock draft, they sit there at 7, they move to 6, allow the Detroit Lions to move down, and Raiders fans might be asking, why we trade up with a team that's not going to take a quarterback? Well, you might be concerned about teams behind you that might want Will Levis, especially with 3 quarterbacks already off the board. You touched on it there. I had Anthony Richardson going as the 3rd quarterback, which means that Will Levis is the only guy left if you're going to take one in the first round. And just to guard against other teams making that move, the Raiders move up 1 spot. And if Josh McDaniels likes Will Levis, and there's a lot to like about him physically, he's a really smart guy, finance guy. He just struggled with injuries last year and lack of playmakers around him. The offensive line wasn't very good either. But in Las Vegas, he'll have an opportunity to sit behind Jimmy Garoppolo, who has sort of become this bridge quarterback at the last 2 destinations now, and learn from Josh McDaniels, who's had success with young quarterbacks. So that could be a real possibility here. But I think at the end of the day, what's going to happen, almost 100% certainty, Jacqueline, is that 4 quarterbacks will be gone by those first 10 picks.
All right, let's talk about another mock trade and moving away from the quarterback position for now. You have the Ravens trading up with Detroit to land Quentin Johnston. So obviously there's a lot of questions around Lamar Jackson and his future with the Ravens. So we don't know what's going on there exactly. But what could Johnston bring potentially to this Ravens team, Ryan?
Well, I want to tread lightly here because General Manager Eric DeCosta got in a little trouble at the Combine when he said that the Ravens needed to fix their wide receiver position, and wide receiver for Baltimore, Rashad Bateman, didn't take that very well. And I get it, but they do need to play better, that unit as a whole, not just from last year, but historically. You can go back almost a decade and try to find someone they drafted who was a success from day one. Quentin Johnston gives you that. He's huge catch radius. He plays like a small receiver in terms of his movements in small areas, but he wins at all 3 levels. And let's assume that Lamar Jackson comes back. That would be in the best interest of the Ravens, of course. He needs that weapon to go along with Rashad Bateman and Devin Duvernay and James Prochet. Players who have been good but not outstanding, and Quentin Johnston gives you that opportunity, and it wouldn't be unrealistic to think that the Ravens would in fact trade up for a wide receiver, especially if one like Johnston's sitting there, and I had them trading up to spot 18 coming up from spot 22. So I think that's certainly reasonable and something to look out for if in fact on draft night we see some of these wide receivers lingering halfway past the draft, the first round, and to see what the Ravens might do if they come up from 22.
And we see him there, 18. So let's talk about the 21st pick. So moving out of the top 20 in your latest mock, Ryan, you have the Jacksonville Jaguars trading up to get Darnell Wright.
Yeah, not a super sexy pick because Darnell Wright's a right tackle, but a super important pick if you're trying to protect your franchise investment in Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars are coming off that great end of the season run. They got to the playoffs, and they lost DeJuan Taylor, the right tackle, who went to Kansas City, incidentally, the team they lost in the playoffs. DeJuan's going to be playing left tackle, but that's not a concern for the Jaguars. Darnell Wright is, however. Now, look, they have Walker Little, their second-round pick out of Stanford. But he wasn't able to beat DeJuan Taylor out in training camp for the right tackle job. He had some spot duty at left tackle last year and looked pretty good, and Doug Peterson said as much. But I think if you want to continue to build this offensive line and protect Trevor Lawrence and continue to get that running game going, Darnell Wright, there are worse ways to go. And here's the thing. He may not even be there at this point in the draft. He might go earlier. He had a great season in 2022. Had previously played left tackle, but he is going to make his money at the right tackle position. I don't think there's going to be any conversation about moving him back to the left side where he wasn't nearly as effective for Tennessee.
And Ryan, you mentioned the Chiefs signing DeJuan Taylor after losing Orlando Brown in free agency. In your latest mock, you have the Chiefs trading up and then selecting DeJuan Jones. What's the need for a guy like that in KC now?
Yeah, you hit on it. Orlando Brown Jr. is gone. Andrew Wiley left as well. And DeJuan Jones is going to be the answer in a lot of ways. He measures 6'8", 375. I laugh every time I say that. At the Senior Bowl, he had the longest arm span in Senior Bowl history, and his arms, I think, are 36 and change, which is enormous by offensive tackle standards, and he's going to come in right away and block out the sun. And is he the most athletic player in this draft? No, but his arms are so incredibly long it allows him to recover even when he gets beaten with his feet. And again, just like we were talking about Trevor Lawrence, the plan is to protect Patrick Mahomes. And we saw after that loss to Tampa Bay in the Super Bowl a few years ago, that's exactly what the Chiefs did. It showed up last year on that Super Bowl run. They've now lost some of those players off that offensive line, so they're looking to restock. And part of the restocking is Jawan Taylor, as you mentioned, from Jacksonville, and now they trade up to get a right tackle in DeJuan Jones, who had a really good season, but had even a better pre-draft process, even though it's just one practice at the Senior Bowl, and then the way he measured at the Combine and interviewed there has him back, on that first-round radar.
All right, Ryan, we know you're a busy guy this time of the year. You're always making the latest mock drafts, and you also have a podcast. You and your podcast co-host, Rick Spielman, you're going on a pro day tour this week. Tell us about it. What are you guys going to be doing?
Yeah, Jacqueline, we're firing up the old with the first pick RV and driving, let's see where we're going to be. We're going to be in Ohio State on Wednesday to see some guy named C.J. Stroud. Then we're flying down to Birmingham, Alabama, driving to Tuscaloosa to see some guy named Bryce Young. And then we're back at the Cincinnati airport to drive an hour to Lexington, Kentucky to see another guy named Will Levis. And don't worry, Jacqueline, on March 30th, we're going to be in Gainesville, Florida to see some guy named Anthony Richardson. So we're going to hit the top 4 guys over the next week and a half here, and it starts Wednesday.
All right, Ryan, March 30th, I'm going to be hitting you up for all the latest tea with Anthony Richardson. You already know it. Okay, that is Ryan Wilson breaking down his latest mock draft. Thank you so much, Ryan. Good stuff as always. We appreciate it. And you can hear Rick and Ryan, look at them there in cartoon form. I know they're going to be on tonight on CBS Sports HQ with their mock draft special. That is at 8 p.m. Eastern. You don't want to miss it. There's going to be a lot of debate, a lot of critiquing of one another's takes, per usual. You can also listen on the CBS Sports app, and you can check out the guys on their podcast With the First Pick. In the latest episode, Ryan and Rick are diving deeper into how free agency changed the outlook for several teams, including the Seahawks, Lions, Raiders, and so much more. You can download and listen wherever you find your podcasts.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.